Yo, welcome back to the channel. It's Buschy. In today's video, we're asking the question, should the Red Wings trade Dylan Larkin? If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button and subscribe for more hockey content. Now listen, I know a lot of Red Wings fans right now are going, Buschy, what are you talking about? No, my heart says no. I don't want to trade him. He's our captain. He's our boy. He's been here for a while. Listen, we're going to go through this objectively and subjectively. So we're here on Cap Friendly. Dylan Larkin signed a 5-year extension with the Red Wings when he was 21 years old, $6.1 million. The players on this list have comparable contracts to Dylan Larkin. This is everything considering the signing date, the signing age, the length, the years, the type, all of that combined, plus how many points they had at the time, and they spit out a percentage. What I did is I looked at the top 5 players on this list minus Sasha Barkov because we know this guy is an absolute stud. So we went with Bo Horvat, Mika Zibanejad, Thomas Hertl, Nick Schmaltz, and Alex Wennberg. You can see that a lot of those players signed around the same time as Larkin age-wise, as long with their contract situation and their cap hit, all very, very similar. Now that you've seen the comparable contracts, let's look at comparable stats. First up, we have Dylan Larkin versus Bo Horvat. Horvat is currently the second-line center on the Vancouver Canucks behind Elias Pettersson. We're going to look at these charts for those 5 players that I mentioned. One thing to note is that you're going to see on this second chart right up here that I'm circling, Dylan Larkin's only goes till 24 because that's how old he is. Bo Horvat's a year older than him. So you're going to see some charts that look incomplete, but it's something that we can look at in terms of, are they going up? Are they going down? Which way are they trending? Let's compare Bo Horvat to Dylan Larkin. When Larkin was 19, he made the All-Star game. You can see this is points per game. So he had 0.56, basically a point every other game, compared to Horvat, 0.36. In year 2, Larkin had his sophomore slump, but the years after, he developed really well. At age 22, he had 32 goals and over 70 points. At age 23 and 24, that's when the pandemic hit. Now, that's not an excuse. Everybody went through it. Every player was in that bubble. But Larkin didn't really perform that well, and some injuries hit him as well. The interesting stats here is Bo Horvat actually had a very slight uptick every single season until he plateaued around age 24 to 25, which is where Larkin is right now. So because Horvat is behind Elias Pettersson on the centerman depth chart of the Canucks, let's look at a centerman that's comparable to Larkin's contract that's a first-line center on his team. That player is Mika Zibanejad, and he's the top centerman on the New York Rangers currently. These charts are making it look like Mount Everest. We already talked about Larkin and how his last 2 seasons haven't been that great, and he's trending downwards, we can say. It's a complete opposite with Mika Zibanejad. You can see at age 24 to age 25 and all the way up to 26, this guy took off. At 26 years old, he had 1.3 points per game. That is top-line stats. Comparing the 2 players at age 24, you can argue a few things here. That Larkin was ahead of Zibanejad at his age, at 22. He's had a few down years, but he was trending upwards. This is where Zibanejad actually got better, at the same age that Dylan Larkin is. So we can argue that if he has the same trajectory as Zibanejad, he is going to get better. How about a guy like Thomas Hertl on the San Jose Sharks? He's on the second line behind Logan Couture. Almost the same thing happened with Zibanejad as it did with Thomas Hertl. At age 24, he has comparable stats to Dylan Larkin, and the years after, he has better stats. He got better and he developed. Could he be a top-line guy? I think he could move past Couture onto that first line with San Jose. At age 25, Hertl was almost a point per game. Can we expect that of Dylan Larkin this year? I think we can. Let's look at a player that not a lot of people know about, Nick Schmaltz of the Arizona Coyotes. Similar contract, similar stats. Looking at the stats over time, I think clearly Dylan Larkin is a better player than Nick Schmaltz, and he's the top-line center on the Arizona Coyotes. I know that's not anything to brag about because the Coyotes aren't that good right now, but statistically, with Larkin having a few down seasons where he was when he peaked at 22, I think he's going to be a better player than Nick Schmaltz. And lastly, another centerman for the Seattle Kraken, Alex Wennberg. These charts look like mirror images of each other. Larkin's stats versus Wennberg's stats over time from 20 until 24 basically mirror each other. Larkin's stats were a little bit better, but the trajectory is exactly the same. At age 22, they peaked. The next 2 years, they didn't have great seasons. And then you see Wennberg at 25 and 26, a slight uptick. You want to see a little bit more with Dylan Larkin for sure, because right now, Wennberg is slotted in as the third line center of the Seattle Kraken. Let's just say the Red Wings decide to trade Dylan Larkin. What's he worth? We don't have to look too far. Anthony Mantha had a $5.7 million cap hit. Now, that was for another 4 seasons that he signed that extension before the season started. But he got traded for Vrana, a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and Richard Panik. Richard Panik was a cap dump for the Capitals. They gave up a second-round pick so that Detroit would take that contract. So let's take that out of the equation. Mantha was still worth Jakub Vrana and a first-round pick at the time. We can definitely compare Vrana and Mantha to each other, and that extra first-round pick is just sitting there. So, could we say that Dylan Larkin is worth a first-round pick? For a Stanley Cup competing team, absolutely. Let's get into the reasons that the Red Wings should trade Dylan Larkin. Number 1, he has a no-trade clause next season. This season, he doesn't. So your window is just this season. If you see that he's not playing as well as you'd like him to, or he's not developing the way that you want him to, this is the time to trade him. At the deadline, into the offseason, before that no-trade clause kicks in. Reason number 2, he's not a top-line center, and he might not turn into one. We looked at the trajectories. He's trending downward. He had a few bad seasons. If you see an uptick this year, that's exactly what you need to see. But if it's staying the same or it's not really going the way you want, you have to think about moving him. Steve Yzerman has traded his captain before. He got rid of Marty St. Louis in Tampa Bay. He also bought out his other captain, Vinny Lecavalier. He has no problem moving on from somebody that doesn't fit his core. Think about this. Yzerman said Mantha was part of the core, signed him to an extension, and then immediately traded him. There is no loyalty with this guy. And we just went through. Mantha was expendable, had a similar cap hit to Dylan Larkin. Maybe the most important reasons are why not to trade Dylan Larkin. Even though I said it maybe doesn't mean that much, Yzerman has said that Larkin is part of his core. He's also the captain of the team. Like I said earlier, he had a 32-goal season a few seasons ago. He was trending upwards. Some injuries derailed him. And he's still young. He's only 25. He can still develop with the young core that the Red Wings have coming up. The better players he's playing around, the better he's going to be. And at the very least, Dylan Larkin is a very serviceable second-line centerman. Keep building around him until you find that number 1. And he still has the opportunity to be the number 1 center. Let's answer the question. Should the Red Wings trade Dylan Larkin? No, they shouldn't. That is taking into consideration contracts, statistics, analytics, looking at the way that this team is being built. They should not trade Dylan Larkin right now. It's all a matter of circumstance. If he has a great season this year, he's not going anywhere. If he doesn't have the season that you want, you have to consider it. You have to be open to making moves to make this team better. Because if we all thought with our hearts, Mantha would still be here, and we would not have Jakub Vrana, we wouldn't have the first-round pick, we wouldn't have got Sebastian Casa. It's something where you have different avenues to look at, and you have to consider everything. And maybe the most important question is, should they trade him or not? It's what should they do to help? They need to find a number 1 centerman. Dylan Larkin is going to be awesome as a second-line guy. On the top line, he might not be able to match up with the best players on other teams. We looked at Alex Wennberg. We looked at Nick Schmaltz. We looked at Thomas Hertl. They were all on the second line with comparable stats and comparable contracts. The one outlier was Mika Zibanejad, and that's who you want Dylan Larkin to turn into, and he still has time to do it. Make sure you follow Healthy Scratch on Facebook and Twitter. Subscribe, like, comment. We'll see you in the next one.